Good evening and welcome. I'm Bob Pace, your host tonight, to talk about CPS and stop taking our children. This is a podcast that you found on Facebook. There's lots of podcasts around, and there's some about CPS. I try to make my podcast interacting, meaning I try to have people involved with the podcast. Tonight, I don't have a guest speaker. So what that means is you can call in and be my guest. I put my number up. It's my office number, 626-698-0990. You can call that number and I can put you live and you can talk on my show about CPS and what they've done to you or what they haven't done to you. You have figured out right now CPS is a bad entity. They're not to be trusted. They're not transparent. And they will take your children. They do what's called child trafficking, which is outlawed. They'll put your child in because every case they think is imminent danger. I know this from experience. I've been fighting for 14 years. Now, my case was active for 3 years. But for 5 years, they were constantly harassing me. So, besides calling in, you can also schedule a time to be my guest. I have 14 shows a week that I do. I do Monday through Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning for 1 hour Pacific Standard Time, and 7 o'clock at night for 1 hour Pacific Standard Time. So you can pick either morning or afternoon, and Monday through Friday or Saturday or Sunday, whatever shows you like. What you do is you email my producer. Her name is Grace, and she works hard on this show, and I really appreciate having her. Anyway, to reach her, you want to email her, Grace at vincentwdavis.com. It's scroll along the bottom of your screen right now. So you just email her at Grace at vincentwdavis.com. And she'll gladly set up a time for you to talk as a guest on my show. We used StreamYard as the application. It's broadcast on YouTube, and I'm doing this from Southern California. The law firm that is producing this podcast is Vincent W. Davis and Associates. They're in Southern California too, as well as I am. Now, it's a big law firm, and they have a lot of attorneys that help you in different areas: immigration, family law, juvenile law, divorce, your workplace, immigration, and so forth. But the one person you really need is dependency court, family law. You need a family law attorney if you're going to beat CPS and keep your children or get your children back. That Child Protection Services, what CPS stands for, is a part of social services. The ones that do the food stamps, the medical, that will help you with your shelter or help you with clothing or a job. That branch of social services is done by the U.S. government. And in that branch, there's another branch that's called Child Protection Services. And they're supposed to stop child abuse and child neglect. But they're also supposed to do family reunification. That's called family reunification. Bring back the family. So, with that being said, We are faced with an entity that doesn't follow rules, that is only interested in abducting your children and put them in foster care. The reason why I'm saying all this, because I had a case I know firsthand. And over the 100 some people I've talked to here on this show, they've said the same thing. It's a money making business, a billionaire business. They're making $20,000 per child per month. That's a lot of money. That's where a lot of our taxpayer money is spent in social services. People don't realize that when you work, you have to give some of your money to the U.S. government. In turn, they fund a program like social services or the military or road construction or highway construction, same thing, but bridge construction, anything that's a public surface. The judiciary, the congressional, and the executive branches are all funded by taxpayers. So they're getting that money, and it's part of the money that you've probably already worked hard and has been taken to you in the form of taxes. Good evening, Faye. Faye is in Kentucky, and she's from Richmond, Kentucky. She is a foster mother. She's a foster kid who is a mother who has lost her daughter but still has her son, and her son has special needs. And I'm trying to have a good night, Faye. If you want to talk tonight, you're perfectly welcome to. I'd love to have you talk more about your case. Anything you do to help you. But Faye really sort of agrees with a lot of things I say. They say in Kentucky it's so bad with social workers. They're they lie. They use the police. They dupe them and they tell the police to do things they're not supposed to do. And I'm telling you right now, you got to think about that. You're at your crossroads and you're dealing with an agency that's going to mess up your life forever. My life for 14 years has not been the same since being involved with them. And the more I talk on here and repeat it, the more I discover what happened to one of my children that was stolen. I've always been questioned why my daughter chose not to come back with her parents. And I think deep inside she was, but I think she was persuaded by maybe my in-laws, my wife's side of the family, but a lot of it was where CPS told her, you can divorce your parents, you divorce your mom and dad. Now we look back and our social worker did threaten us that you'll never see your daughter again. Why? Because we are trying to fight for our constitutional and our civil rights. And at first, I did fight with them. I told them what they're doing was wrong. I told them you did not need to take our children out of the home because they weren't in imminent danger. See, that's their rise to things. They'll come to your home. And my rule number 3 is what I'm going to say right now. Is you do not give them your children and you do not let them in your home. The only way they can do that, they have to have a warrant from court. I did not know that. That's some of the basic rules. They're very intimidating. It's very, very intimidating. Very, very intimidating. But as I was saying about rule number 1 and about having somebody to help you, you need something called an attorney. Because CPS is so complicated, you're like Alice in Wonderland falling in a rabbit hole with so many doors to pick from and so many places to go. It's a cobweb. It's a nightmare down there. It's got spiders. They'll spin webs over you. They'll eat you up. They don't care about parents. They want to alienate the kids from the parents, which is illegal. They want to put kids right away into foster care, which is illegal. And rule number 3, I say, is that do not talk to social workers. Do not let them in your home. Do not let them, try to tell you things are not true. All you have to do is say no or yes to them. Or better yet, say that you got an attorney. And maybe you don't have one, but you can fake you have one. And tell them, I need to talk to my attorney first before I get involved further. What is your name? What is your phone number? May I have your card? But don't let them in the home, because what they see in the home, they'll use against you. You got to have your attorney look at your home first. Because what will happen, they'll come in there and you have something laying around that's illegal, they'll pick up on it and they'll persecute you. Faye, who's on the show, has been persecuted. Yes, you can. You can call anytime you like, Faye, anytime you want, because this show is very flexible. My phone is standing by, Faye. So Faye's going to be my guest tonight, and she's going to talk. And that will be something really, 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 really great. Because you're going to find out that this particular agency really hurts you. It really has hurt me. It's destroyed our daughter. And we do have an attorney that you can contact. His name is Vincent W. Davis. He can fight CPS. He can get your kids back. He's done lawsuits against them. And he knows what to do. And so he's offering a consultation of 30 minutes at $49.99. That's $50.
Hello.
Hello there, Faye.
Hi.
Well, tonight, folks, we got Faye from Richmond, Kentucky. And Faye, why don't you, because a lot of people may not know who you are or heard your story, why don't you give a brief summary? First, you were a foster. First, you were a foster care kid first, right?
Yeah, I grew up in and out of the foster care system as a kid, from the age of 2 to the age of 14.
Wow. 12 years you're in foster care.
Yeah.
And during those 12 years, were you abused?
Sometimes, yeah. In some foster homes, we would have cruel and unusual punishments. In some of the foster homes, I would get touched on by the foster dad, or even in one foster home was being raped along with his daughter.
Oh, no. That is so sad. When you hear that, people, you have to understand foster care people aren't screened very well. Foster care people want to join in because they want to adopt a child because they can't have children of their own, or they don't want to do the long adoption process. To adopt a child in our country takes a long time and a lot of money. To adopt a child from other countries, same thing. A lot of money, a lot of time. But in foster care, they can get a child really quick because CPS has the power to give children right away to foster care. They don't even check them out. They're not even, they maybe have given some instruction, orientation, but that's not the answer. That's not the answer. Now, did your mom and dad try to keep you, or were they not part of your life?
My dad had his rights terminated when I was a baby due to domestic violence between my mom and my dad.
Okay.
And then my mom, she was basically a functional alcoholic and recreational drug user.
Oh,
and what
boy.
I mean by functional is she worked 2 jobs every day of the week, drunk.
Yeah.
She was always under the influence of alcohol.
Well, to support her habit, she probably had to work 2 jobs.
Yeah. So, but she did it always under the influence. So she had alcohol problems. She had a recreational drug use issue and everything. And aside from that, almost every relationship she would get in was domestic violence. Really horrendous domestic violence.
Did you have brothers and sisters growing up?
I do, but they're on my dad's side. I only have half siblings, but none of us really know each other.
So your mom and dad only had you then?
No, my mom only had me.
Right, and so your dad had other children by other women.
Yeah, he had 5 other kids with other women.
Yeah. So you're brought up. I mean, at the age of 2, you're put into foster care?
I was put into foster care at the age of 2 because my mom, I guess, owed possibly her drug dealer money, and they came and kicked my mom's door in and beat my mom nearly to death in front of me at gunpoint.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I can still remember every incident of that, believe it or not, at 2 years old. I was the one that called 911.
Really?
Yep. I knew that I could call on a phone. So back then, when you would leave the phone off the hook, the operator would come on. Okay, this was in the 80s. And so I just went and pulled the phone down, off of the hook and just left it, And the operator come on and she could hear me squalling and screaming and crying. And so she I guess, could trace the phone, and that's how the ambulance and the police was sent to the house.
Right.
Yeah. So, my mom spent 4 weeks in a coma in the hospital after that incident, and the family was told that she probably would not survive it. But she did. She survived it.
So when you grow up, did you get involved in Girl Scouts or do any sports?
No, in foster care, you really don't get to be involved in that stuff.
Wow. How about your education? Did they put you in good schools?
No, not really, because in foster care you move around so much, you don't really have the ability to actually be in a school long enough to be established.
Did you try that?
I ended up having to get my GED because I was never able to be in a school long enough to get a diploma.
So at 14, you're a teenager in foster care.
Yeah, I ran away from foster care after I was 14 and lived on the streets from the time I was 15 till the time I turned 19.
Did you get in trouble?
No. I mean, nobody cared.
Well, did you meet the wrong kind of people out there?
Well, of course. I mean, I ran into a lot of trouble. I ran into pimps trying to pimp me out, and people trying to take advantage of me, people trying to hurt me, trying to do what I could to survive, eating out of dumpsters, robbing people for money, just to eat, just to have something to eat for the night, a place to lay my head, that I felt remotely safe. Did any
churches offer to help you out, or you weren't exposed to churches?
There was one church. That's how I ended up getting off the street.
Okay.
One of the churches figured out that I was homeless and that I was sleeping in an abandoned building. And they stepped in and said that it was not okay for me to be on the streets, and that instead of them calling CPS, which really didn't give a dang to begin with, they put me in the home with one of the church members. And I stayed in her basement and rented her basement out from her. until I got my own place at 19.
I see. Now, did CPS even care about you?
No, they don't care. They've never cared. They've never cared about kids. Never.
So, all you listeners out there, I want you to hear that. CPS is only interested in one thing. That is the money part of this business.
When I told my social worker that my foster dad was raping me, you want to know what her response was? Well, what do you want me to do about it? I don't have nowhere to put you. You need to just suck it up and get along with these people. You know, at least you're being cared for.
Wow.
That was her response.
So the part of the problem I see is that all the social workers I've met and the people I've heard in the show, that the social workers don't have very much of an education or experience of doing work, doing family reunification to help out children. They're just interested in one thing, and that's what my social workers, how soon do I get my bonus? I need my new eyelashes, my makeup, my Gucci purse, my BMW car. That's all my social worker talked about.
Yeah.
And
and if they cared about kids, they wouldn't put kids in the home with pedophiles and convicts, felons, people that have lost their kids.
So they don't screen these foster care parents at all?
They're supposed to, but they don't. They put my son, when they took him from me and gave him to my abuser, in the home with 3 convicted felons, and this is all in their own paperwork. I can actually show the paperwork. They put my son in the home with 3 convicted felons. My mom, convicted felon. My mom's friend, convicted felon. My mom's boyfriend, which they call paramour, convicted felon. And not only a convicted felon, but a convicted sex offender.
Oh, boy.
And they knew he was there, because they went out to the house and asked everybody for their IDs, ran their IDs. His prison picture showed up with all his charges and what he was charged for, and it clearly showed right on there that he was convicted and sent to prison for molestation and rape of a girl under the age of 12. And they knew this. They knew this and still placed my son in that home and said it was okay for him to live in the home with the sex offenders and the child abusers and the convicts, as long as the grandmother didn't leave the child alone with the sex offender. It was perfectly okay.
So did you, at age 14, I mean, you're in your teenage year, did you know anything about dating or meeting the right kind of guy or courting or anything?
I was scared. I was scared to date. I was scared to date. It was just, foster kids are treated like trash. We're bullied and made fun of, and it was just hard, and plus I didn't trust nobody. So dating was the farthest thing from my mind. I was just trying to survive.
Wow. So what made you think about having children?
Well, I didn't have kids until I was 21 years old.
Oh, so you had no children till you're 21.
Right.
Well, what made you not have children? I mean, you just stayed away from guys?
I didn't trust anybody.
Oh.
I'd been raped, I'd been molested, and I couldn't trust men. I just couldn't.
And there's nobody like a counselor or anybody you could go talk to. It was that bad.
I mean,
to be
honest? You want me to be honest?
Yeah, I do.
Foster kids or anybody that's been through traumatic experiences in their life, we don't want to constantly rehash it. We just want to put it out of our mind.
Well, was this all in Richmond, Kentucky?
No, it wasn't. Some of it was in Richmond. Some of it was in Mount Sterling, Winchester, Kentucky, and some of it was in California.
So you made it out to California. Why did?
I had relatives and stuff in California.
Oh,
yeah, that I had been put with at one point. Yeah.
And that didn't work out for you.
Well, not really, because I mean, there were relatives that I really didn't know like that. You know what I mean? And it was just a hard situation. But no, it didn't work out.
I'm so sorry. I mean, to all the listeners out there, here's a woman who, up to she was 21, started to have children, but she's in foster care at age 2. And her mother was an alcoholic. Her dad was always in prison, I guess, doing illegal things. And she didn't have any brothers or sisters that she could call family. Did you have a grandmother?
Yeah, I mean, I had a grandmother and a great grandmother, and they tried, the best they could, but it just, they were older, and it was too hard on them trying to raise a young kid.
Yeah.
The one that had all the trauma and issues that I did.
And this is all in the 80s and 90s and 2000, those years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, through the 2000s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, yeah.
To me, I grew up in the 60s. I mean, I was born right after World War II, but things seem to, I don't know. I cannot believe that in the 80s and 90s this was going on with CPS. And
can I explain something real quick to you?
Sure.
A lot of people don't understand or even know or have no knowledge that CPS was formed in the 1800s.
Okay.
So CPS has been a thing since the 1800s. CPS, Children's Aid Society, was formed in 1853.
And what was the purpose of it?
Well, it formed off of the orphan trains. The orphan trains where kids were put on, these trains taken from the poor and sold off to the rich, basically.
And that was 1836?
It was in the 1800s all the way through 1853 and then all the way up till now. I don't know if you're familiar with Georgia Tan, but Georgia Tan was tied into the orphan trains. She was a lady that opened a pregnant mother's group home where families would send away their daughters that were pregnant out of wedlock, out of shame to her, for them to go there and have their babies, and then Georgia Tan would sell the babies off to the rich.
Well, I think it came from the poor. The children were born into...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The women were poor. They were sent there out of shame. The family didn't want people knowing they were pregnant out of wedlock, and they would send their daughters there to have their babies, and the babies would be sold by Georgia Tan to the rich. And not only did she sell children to the rich, but she also sold them to work farms as slaves. And then a lot of the children were murdered.
That's a part of history they don't teach you about in high school.
You can look it up and read it.
No, I am right now.
That's not true.
No, I'm just reading it with horrific things here. I'm just, they talk about it in Toronto. In Canada, 1893, the first Children's Act was passed in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
and an act for the prevention of cruelty to and better protection of children.
CAPTA, ASPA, all of it. It all stems from the Oregon Train and the Children Aid Society.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is not new. This has been going on for ever. And nothing's changed. It's still operating the same as it did in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Kids are still being trafficked and sold. Kids are still being murdered inside of children's aid societies, which is CPS.
Yeah.
People say that the system's broken, but it's not broken because it's still operating the same as it always did. But when I tell people this, they think I'm crazy, but all you have to do is go and look it up for yourself.
Oh, I am. I'm just reading all about the Children's Act of 1853 in New York.
Yeah. Well, also look up organ trains. Orphan trains is what I'm meaning to say. Orphan trains.
The orphan train movement. The orphan train movement. It shows a picture of children's on a train.
Yeah, that's what they did. They brought them in from on trains and then shuffled them out to foster adopt parents and sold them to parents. And some went to foster homes, some went to work farms to be slaves.
It was an ambitious, controversial social experiment that's now recognized as the beginning of foster care system in the United States. The orphan train movement placed more than 120,000 orphan children with families across the country between 1853 and early 1900s.
And it's still going on today. It just has more power, and now it's legal.
Yeah. Well, I remember the child labor laws. They talked about children working that should not be working for the cheap thing there. So I remember when that came into play.
Well, now Kentucky has signed a bill into law to overturn that. Now they're saying that children of any age can work if they want to.
Well, the thing about working is so crazy because right now, McDonald's, McDonald's, right? They're advertising on their windows. You can give us a call about working for us. Your starting pay is $16.50. Now, that's in California. So with $16.50, that's really great. But the burgers now are $10. I mean, you can't go, if you want to drink, fries, and a burger, you're looking more than $10.
Right.
So
here they get paid like $12 an hour,
which I think is great because I started in the old days when I was paid $1.45 counting mealworms at a pet shop.
Yeah.
Or $1.65 as an ocean lifeguard.
Yeah.
Because I've been working since I've been 15. So, but this CPS thing, I wish there's a simple way we can make changes and wish somehow, but it seems like it goes on and on and on.
Yep. And it's not going to change because I tell people this all the time. We can want changes all we want to, but when you've got rich people, elites, and government officials that are invested in this, you're not going to get the changes you want because why would somebody go in and fix something that they're profiting off of? Well, if you go in and you fix it and you can't profit off of it anymore, then you're not going to be making any money off of it. So they're only going to do enough to just appease people and shut them up. They're never really going to do anything substantial because they're invested in it. A lot of these politicians, they have stock in foster care. They're invested in privatized foster care adoption agencies. They're married to social workers. So it's going to be hard to get them to go against the grain.
It further was stating that the 1930 Depression, which luckily I wasn't born during there, it really hurt the kids then in 1930s.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's like I said, it's always been take away from the poor and give to the rich. That's what CPS has always been about.
Now, when they started the social service family assistance was made in February of 1936, only 12 states and District of Columbia implemented the program.
Right.
And they had 1.7 million for 140,286 children with 56,836 families.
Yeah.
Today, the program serves 7.2 million children a year. That's a lot of children.
Yeah.
And there are 3.7 million families which receive benefits. You know, they're at the low income, the very poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an eye opener when you actually read how CPS was started and how it's so very much just alike how it's ran and operated today.
Yeah.
So, but now I only get on here and speak. You know, my case is done. There's nothing I can do about it. You know, I just get on here and speak because I feel like if I can get on here, you know, and tell my story, and it maybe can, you know, help another family or inspire another foster child to have hope or to, you know, to realize, you know, they're not alone, you know, and that, you know, maybe it could help, you know, help in some way, I guess. I don't know. But I do have an advocacy group that I work with. It's called Kentucky Family Preservation. And we are working together as a group to try to enact changes in our state. A couple of the things that we're working on is bringing awareness and education to the public. The second thing that we're working on is trying to get some of the laws changed here. One of them being is taking anonymity out of, you know, when people call into a court for abuse and neglect, they can't no longer do it anonymously. That's what we're trying to get changed, because that is a lot of what causes the abuse to occur in the system. Is you get people that call in on people for nefarious reasons. You know, a neighbor's ticked off at you because your dog barked too loud, or you know, somebody just don't like you and they want to call in on you. Well, if people have to give their information, then a lot of times those bullcrap calls will stop.
I agree 100% with you, Faye, because my problems with CPS was based on lay people. And see, there's two types. I say there's two types of people that call in. They're the professionals that are required by law that work with children to call in if they see abuse or neglect. And those are teachers, right? Those are teachers, policemen, counselors, firemen, nurses, doctors, whatever. Then the other type of person are your lay person. These are family, friends, relatives, neighbors. You know, they're common people that are not required by law. And I would say that most of the cases I hear on the show, or including myself, were done by retaliation by family members, or they wanted to get your children. I cannot believe.
Well, see, that's how it started with me. That's how it started with me, with my mom. My mom petitioned the courts to take my firstborn child away at 4 months old.
Why did you?
And the messed up part about that is that this very judge that took me from my mom then turned around and took my son from me based off my biological mother's lies, handed him over to a felon, a child abuser, living with 2 other child abusers and felons.
Wow. And all this happened when you're 21?
Yeah, I was 21. Yeah.
That's a terrible, that's your youth. When I was 21, I was dating and enjoying life and working and going to college.
I've spent my whole life fighting this system.
And I'm just,
once you're in this system, you're never free from it.
I guess not. I mean, to all you listeners out there, this is a terrible, it's kind of like, I didn't know until, I hate to say it, is that when I lost my job is when I started getting involved in CPS, because my in-laws were trying to take our children. They were trying to alienate our children from my wife. And so it was really sad. It really was sad. And of course I had,
once they gave, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was trying to redo a family. This is a sad part because I waited till I was 30 to have my first marriage. And 10 years later, my marriage ended, not because I wanted to. And I had one child with that woman. And she said, well, you're never going to see this child again. And at age 3, I never have. She's 32 years old, and she'll be 33 this May 2nd. And I've written and tried to, I followed her when she was at the high school. I wasn't allowed to go to her graduation because I need tickets from her mother. She went to the college that I went to, I found out. And I think she's married. I don't know if she has children or not, but that was my firstborn.
Yeah.
And see, I waited. See, I look at my life right now and I really feel kind of discouraged. I shouldn't be that way, but having a CPS matter at my age is wrong. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I married a second time and I have a young family. I started off having a young family. I didn't start having children again until I was in my 50s.
Yeah.
And I never thought I was in my 50s. I kept thinking I'm, forever young, I'm still I'm still young there. So, well, that's because of my lifestyle. I was still surfing, still going to the beach, traveling the world and enjoying life too much. And so CPS comes along and it just corrupt and changed my life so bad.
Yeah.
And now
they did me too. They did a number on me. Especially my son, they destroyed him. My son is just destroyed. They crushed his spirit and his soul. The child they took from me, is not the same boy that came back home. He's, it's so hard to explain.
No, I know that's hard because he will never, is he able to date or go with other people, or is
he's completely disabled now because of everything that he's been through with anxiety, PTSD, depression, and just with the overall trauma. He's just completely disabled. Plus he's autistic too, so he has that to deal with on top of everything else.
Yeah.
So no, he basically lives with me. He can't really function on his own. He can't hold a job because of all the, the mental issues and stuff he has. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I deal with now.
Can he do outings? Can he play putt-putt golf or go to the zoo?
Yeah, he can go out. But for limited times, because he gets overstimulated by everything, and he just can't handle it. But
but then your life,
but yeah, he goes out.
but your life is cut short because well, shoot, you grew up in foster care. You never really had a teenage years, and you never knew anything about dating because your whole perspective about guys was that guys are abusers.
But I never got to go to prom. I never got to graduate with my peers. I never got to drive a car. I never got to do any of the things. I never got to walk across the, what is it called, auditorium and get my diploma handed to me. No, I never got to do any of those things. Everything that I got, to do, I worked hard for it and done it for myself.
Yeah.
And then everything I worked hard for, CPS came and made sure they destroyed it.
Wow. So that's another negative about CPS. Yeah. I'm trying to picture the difference between CPS in your place and CPS in Maine or Virginia or Philadelphia, or Texas or Alabama or Georgia, where they all seem the same.
Well, it is because it's all operates the same as when it was first founded in 1853. That's why I tell people when they say, "Oh, the system's broken," no, it's not broken. It's not broken. It's working exactly the way it was first designed to work. Take from the poor, give to the rich. That's how it was formed and founded. That's how it operated back then. That's how it's operating now. It's not broke. They intentionally founded it that way. All you got to do is go and read. You go and read and see, and anybody that can read can see that it's doing exactly the way it was when it was first formed in the 1800s. Here we're in 2024, and it's still operating exactly the same as it was in the 1800s. If not, sometimes a little bit worse now, but still operating the same. I tell everybody that CPS is a well-oiled machine. It's not broke. It's well-oiled. It's actually functioning the way it was manufactured to work. So, but, anytime you say things like that, you're a conspiracy theorist. So.
No, it's just, I guess, reality. There's so many things that I've found. I went and tried to find my roots, what my ancestors were.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my ancestors' background is that my great-great-grandmother, two greats back, is from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. And she was a full-blooded Lakota Sioux. And she's married to a Norwegian from Norway, from Austin, Norway, my great-great-grandfather. And he supposedly had his background traces back to the 900, 800 AD as a Viking.
Oh, wow.
And so in the 1800s, 1870s, there was a lot going on with my great-grandmother's tribe. They were being massacred, and, the children were being killed.
Being sold.
Yeah, being sold, and then they cut their hair off, tried to speak only one language, had to wear the clothing, the uniform, could not wear their own clothing, could not eat their own. They were trying to drive the Indian out of the blood of those people.
Right.
And so I've been studying that for years now. I've actually, in 1972, I stayed at the Rosebud Reservation right before they had the last Wounded Knee fight in 1974, where the federal government tried to take over the native Indians again. I mean, there's so many battles and histories, and I don't know. It's just it's sadness. So I don't know what I mean, being involved in CPS and seeing the history and realizing I just didn't think about that's been going on since 1800s until tonight. You're the first person to tell me. I didn't think about going look at the history.
Yeah, I've studied this for years because where I'm, a former foster kid, I've like literally borderline obsessed with it. So a lot of people have no clue that this has been going on since the 1800s. A lot of people don't know about the orphan trains or even Georgia Tan.
What's the last one? Georgia what?
Georgia Tan.
What's that?
She is the mother of adoption. She is the one that started adoption within the Children's Aid Society.
Okay.
Yeah. She started with her foster home for unwed mothers and babies. So the mothers would go there sent away by their family because they were unwed, and they shamed the family. So they didn't want their daughters to, be in the limelight, public knowing that they were having a baby, because it would make the family look bad. So they would send their daughters to Georgia Tan's home. And Georgia Tan would, keep them there and care for them. And then when they would have the babies, she would take them from the mothers, sell them off to wealthy, rich white people or wealthy, rich whoever, and sell them off to farms and as work slaves or what have you. And some of them actually would even end up murdered. Wow. I mean, you can read about all of it.
Yeah, I plan to do that. I plan to learn a little bit more about that.
She actually went to prison. She actually went to prison for it eventually.
She was doing what, illegally selling kids, or I mean?
Yeah, she was illegally selling them, and eventually, after years and years and years of her selling children and selling them off to slavery and children even being murdered by her, they finally, put her in prison for it.
Now, what did you, okay, you're 21 and you have your son. And what was the allegations?
I had my daughter at 33.
Okay, but you had your son at 21.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What were the allegations that CPS at 21 were taking your son away?
My mom went up to family court and filed a petition to bring me into family court because she tried to tell the courts that a bunch of lies on me, that I was involved in a domestic violence relationship with my son's father, which I was not. I left him at 6.5 months pregnant because of, him trying to be abusive to me. And I wasn't going to stand for that.
Yeah.
I left him.
Why did you go with the guy? I mean, was that your first dating experience?
Yeah, he was my first boyfriend out of foster care, and we were together for 4 years.
Wow. Yeah. How did you guys meet? Was he in foster care?
He was in foster care too.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, the judge that removed me from my mom and then removed my child from me and gave to my mother was also the same judge that removed him from his family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, 12 years later.
I had my second.
Yeah. I mean, you had your second at 33, which is 12 years later, right?
11 years, yeah.
11 years.
Yeah, it's 11 years different.
And how old? How old is your daughter now?
fixing to be 11.
Now,
My son is 20.
why was she taken from you?
Well, when I had her, she was born with a lot of problems. You know, we didn't know it at first. The first hospital didn't catch none of the problems with her. And so I ended up having to go with her to UK Children's Hospital by ambulance because she was having problems breathing at home. And took her to the hospital. And before we could get to the hospital with her, she coded twice in the back of the ambulance. Oh. And at the emergency room, she coded again. At that point, they said that they couldn't keep doing resuscitation on her because it would do too much damage to her heart. So they said that they would have to put her in a medically induced coma to give her lungs and her body, you know, ability to heal. So I allowed them to do that, you know, even though I knew that it could be a chance she wouldn't come out of it. I stayed with her the whole 3.5, almost 4 weeks she was in the hospital at UK Children's Hospital. I never left my daughter's side. And I stayed in the Ronald McDonald House in UK so that I would have somewhere to stay while I was there to eat, shower, and all that stuff. And I left my son with a friend of mine while I was at the hospital.
Okay.
And so, you know, she was there. She did end up coming out of the coma. I got to go home with her after about 4 weeks. I was home with her for 3 weeks, and my son was like not wanting to leave her side because he was traumatized over her almost dying. Okay? And he didn't want to leave her side, and he had to go to school. He wasn't wanting to go to school. And I told him, I said, son, I understand that you want to spend time with your sister, and you can, but you have to go to school. It's just not an option. You know, I'm like, you've got to go. I have to send you to school. You know, and he threw a fit and was mad and didn't want to go. And see, normally I would walk him to the bus and stand there and wait till he got on it. But where my daughter was hooked up to machines when she came home from the hospital, I couldn't do that because I couldn't unhook her from them. Right. So he had to walk over to the bus on his own, which was not even 100 foot from the house. Okay. All right. I could throw a rock and hit the bus stop. Okay. And so I would just watch him from the window go over to the bus area.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. I'm saying.
Yeah. So, well, what happened that day was he didn't get on the bus, and I didn't know that he didn't get on the bus. And so I was home taking care of the baby, you know, and I get a call from a neighbor, and she's like, "Hey," she says, "Do you know where your son's at?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And she's like, "Your son, do you know where he is?" I'm like, "At school." She says, "No, he's not." I'm like, What do you mean?" And she's like, "He's in my yard, up in my tree." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, wow." I said, "So you can see him?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Can you please do me a favor?" I said, "My daughter's hooked up to her monitors, and I can't pull her off the monitors while they're reading." I said, "Would you do me a favor? Would you see if he'll come down out of the tree for you and just kindly walk him up here for me?" And I said, "I'd be so appreciative if you would do that." And she said, "Yeah, no problem." So she goes out there, gets him to come home. He comes in the door, and of course I'm upset with him, and I send him to his room. I said, you know, "Go to your room," and I said, "You can't have the game or TV right now." And he threw an absolute fit because he couldn't do that. And so he was really aggravated and really mad, you know, because he couldn't play the game and stuff. But long story short, that woman then goes home and calls CPS on me.
Wow, I think.
So an hour later, CPS comes knocking on my door. I had company at my house, mind you, when they knocked on my door.
Okay, why don't we stop right there, Faye, because I have about 30 seconds left, and I need to end the show. I'm sorry. But I'd like to stop it there and continue this because I find this fascinating what you're sharing with us because now I understand, and this is, wow. I really am. I'm proud of you hanging in there and taking care of your children. Thank you so much for tonight for making my show
You're
a
welcome.
different. And I'm going to look and learn more about what you shared with me. And to all you other listeners out there, please don't give up. Get your children back. And with that said, I'm going to say, God bless you all. Good night. And I'll see you again tomorrow. This is Bob Pace signing
Good
off.
night, Bob.
Yeah.